This is the What Hope Sounds Like podcast, featuring Light On Moments of Hope, spotlighting the issue of human trafficking in our cities. The Light FM's Doc talks with Demetria Williams, who is the executive director of Life 107 in Asheville, North Carolina, a Christ-centered nonprofit organization fighting trafficking in Western North Carolina. Note, this podcast contains sensitive adult topics and discussions. Parental discretion advised.
Light on Moments of Hope is all about those moments of hope of Jesus doing things in and around human trafficking. We hear so much about that it's an issue, but not many people start talking about, well, what's the issue like? And then even fewer say, well, where's Jesus in all of this? So kind of where I'd like to go today with you, Demetria. Thank you for being here to talk. But first, tell me about you and briefly tell me about Life 107.
Absolutely. So I am the executive director of L7. I've been with them for 6 years and was actually born and raised in the mountains, lived a couple other places, have a background in Christian ministry. So I'm so glad to be aligned with Life 107, which has its foundational roots in Jesus Christ. And would love to tell you about what Life 107 actually means. It's associated with Psalm 107. So a person who is part of the sex trade industry, they often refer to themselves as someone who's in the life. And so it's that term that actually signifies what they're experiencing. But 107 actually is from Psalm 107. And if you get a chance to dig in there, Psalm 107 just talks about the God who's willing to go into the deep and do this difficult work with these ladies. And so we just adopt that as really the foundation of who we are. We've been around for quite a while in WNC, and I've been blessed to watch God really open up this ministry over the past couple years and spread abroad. We're actually doing some things in Panama. We have some radars out to other places, but we're really focusing here in WNC because we do know that trafficking is happening here. It might just look different than what people seem to think of as trafficking. So hopefully we'll get into that. But Life 107 is a nonprofit. We faith-based. Our entire mission is to eliminate sex trafficking and empower survivors to successful recovery.
That's the first time in all of this whole month of Light on Moments of Hope where I've heard that phrase, the life, I'm in the life. And yeah, so I hadn't heard that before. And it really speaks to the well-established space where the human trafficking happens, that it's not just like, oh, this just popped up yesterday. It's been going on for years, so much so that there's a language set, I would imagine, right? Like life.
And a lot of the girls who are trafficked or who are engaging in commercial sex in any way, the depth of what they experience really gets inside in many ways. It penetrates through the physical body, into the emotional, and then definitely into the spirit. And so a lot of times they just begin to own that as part of their identity.
How long has Life 107 been operating?
Yeah, so we've been around since 2013. And yeah, so been in this for quite a while, and we are focused in Buncombe County in terms of that's where our base is, but we are available to work in all the counties of Western North Carolina.
And how big is the issue? I've read some things. Was on the North Carolina site, DOV, I think it is, and they said that North Carolina is 9th in the nation. I mean, what's the magnitude of that? I mean, we see those top 10 lists or whatever, and you go, oh my, but you don't really know what it means. So what does that mean practically?
Yeah, I'm glad that you're leaning in the right places with what trafficking really looks like here, because I think a lot of people think North Carolina, we're in the Bible Belt, we're so innocent, but trafficking absolutely occurs in a couple contexts in this area specifically. But we are always, like when there are evaluations that are occurring throughout the nation, North Carolina consistently ranks among the top 10, sometimes 11 states in the in America for trafficking victimization. And a couple contexts really create that, or a couple of maybe issues create that context for us. And firstly is we see boyfriend pimp controlled trafficking. And so these girls are very present in our community. They are passing us in the grocery store, passing us on the street, sitting in the classrooms. They are present, and their victimization is happening through an intimate partnership that started kindly and started lovingly and then quickly turns into coercion, manipulation, and violence. And we also see what is often referred to as familial trafficking, and I specifically call that backdoor trafficking. And this is when a child is often very young and being traded or forced into commercial sex by someone in the family. And so that could look like a mother who has an addiction and who needs to be able to serve her substance use disorder. And so she chooses to trade a child for commercial sex. It could be a father who wants control. It could be anyone in the family who is benefiting from the commercial sex of a minor, of a child. And then lastly, we see lots of survival sex, specifically survival sex, specifically in the community who is experiencing homelessness in Asheville and surrounding places. So you think about the circumstances that these women are in. They have nothing to give in order to have their needs met. And so we know that oftentimes commercial sex is traded in order to meet those needs. So WNC is no exception to the rest of North Carolina and the rest of the nation when it comes to trafficking victimization.
One of the curiosities I've had is certainly statistically, the statistics point to bigger cities, that this is prevalent in bigger cities. How much of the impact, so I'm going to throw percentages, but if there's a 30% problem in Asheville, is there a 30% problem in Hickory or a smaller area, or is it just really mostly concerned with larger metropolitan areas?
Yeah, I think the misconception is that there is a saturation in metropolitan or urban areas. And I would say that maybe there are higher rates of certain types of victimization in terms of possibly the type of victimization that occurs when a pimp is victimizing multiple people in a stable. He will move them to high profile cities where high profile events are happening. So that type of trafficking, I would say, yes, is occurring at higher rates in cities, but it does not compare in terms of other types of trafficking that are occurring. So as I mentioned earlier, where there's high poverty or high drug use, we often see an uptick in trafficking. And so we know with the recent opioid crisis that a lot more commercial sex is happening to serve those habits. And after COVID, we see mass amounts of poverty, people who cannot make ends meet. And so they resort to the trade of commercial sex. So I think it is a comparison. There are high rates in certain cities across our state, and it just looks differently in terms of how that is playing out in the community.
From what I've hearing you say, that this is number one, there's a transaction, there's transactional stuff, meaning, and that's kind of master of the obvious there, but the question is about whether it is, as you mentioned, you categorized as survival versus possible greed or possible building empire business. Is that what we're kind of talking about, or is it everything in between?
Oh, yeah. I think what would help is to define trafficking, and then that would help us to put this in the right space as a criminal action. So trafficking occurs when any person exchanges a sex act for anything of value, and they are under the age of 18. So if a minor is engaging in commercial sex, they are being trafficked. We do have a large number of people who are trafficked over the age of 18. And what constitutes trafficking in that context is we have to be able to see that another person is pulling the strings behind the scene. they are forcing, frauding, coercing this person to trade commercial sex. So I think when we look at it in terms of the fact that it is a crime, that it's always a crime for a child, someone under 18, to trade a sex act and force anything of value, that it's not just money, that could be a purse, a trip to get someone's hair done. There is a lot of manipulative tactics that really play out on survivors, but always in the context of a minor. That person's being trafficked, and then those who are over 18, we just have to know somebody else is benefiting, and that's usually a pimp or someone close to them.
You mentioned after COVID, you're seeing an increase. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
How's the fight going now? We're 2 years away from the last round of COVID, of remarkable COVID anyway. How's it going?
So I think for us specifically, I did not see a huge change in an uptick of survivors that we receive to give care to. So I haven't seen it through that lens being greatly impacted. But I do know, because of the data, that really the commercial sex trade increased because of COVID. And I've got to say also that I think familial trafficking upticked because people were losing jobs, could not pay for their needs, and because a lot of young children who weren't victimized before became victims, and then those who were actually already being victimized were not in a classroom where they could be recognized by a teacher. And so, the effect of COVID is everybody goes indoors, everything gets quieter, and we have children and women who are not seen by the community very well. So I'm glad we're out of that, to where we can keep our eye out for the sparrow, those who are not noticed in our community. We're back on, right?
The whole idea of Light On Moments of Hope is to call attention, to shine a light on this horrific thing that goes on in our communities. And we talk a lot about the survivors, and we talk a lot about the situational, like we just have the different situations, familial or survival, or just point blank trafficking for dollars. But is there a profile? Is there a way in which we can say, here are the people who are perpetrating this crime? And I'm talking about going past the quote unquote pimp. Who are, I would say, who are these people?
Yeah. Oh, wow. For sure. I am so glad that we do talk about survivors first, and that we also don't forget that there are other people at play in this who are driving the demand for commercial sex. And firstly, there is who we call the pimp or the trafficker. It's the person who's involved in benefiting from this person's exploitation. They usually pocket the money, and there's a lot of manipulative tactics that they have learned over their lifetime. And sometimes people are brought up in this type of culture or worldview to where it's okay to exploit another person, and they just learn this trade over time. Some people fall into it in other ways, but I do think we have to think outside of how in our minds we think of as a pimp being a certain way, and that is not the case. Just being in this work for a while, seeing that pimps can literally be anyone who is willing enough to benefit from the exploitation of another person. And I would say what they have in common is probably early childhood trauma, just like the girls that we work with. 95% of victims of trafficking have been exposed to some type of extensive trauma as a child, maltreatment or abuse. And I would say it's the same for traffickers, that they have some type of crack in the foundation that has led them into this space. And at the same time, they've learned skills of manipulation and coercion, and oftentimes pimps are very violent. And so we just see that this could be anyone in the community. And also, we have to talk about what we call Johns or tricks, which are buyers, people who are conditioned over time to purchase a human for sex. And I think that's where Life 107 is really trying to pour in a lot of resources, specifically within the past year, just training up a generation that has a solid, natural, intimate, godly platform for sexuality. And I think that's where the root is. And when we dig in and we make sure this generation and the future generation has the right way of thinking about what is sexuality. Look at this divine gift that God gave to all of us and us protecting that. And I think that's where we start with demand. And L7, if on Life 107's website, you can see where we are really working against the demand, as well as working with the women who've been in the sex trade.
Yeah, I think that's so important. It's so important to call out both sides.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who are running large companies and providing goods, and sometimes saying great things about their companies and what they're doing in the community. And all along, they're on the other side of this really dark hole. So, which brings me to the everybody needs Jesus. And so, Moments of Hope is again about not just the problem, but where's Jesus in all of this? And I think, for someone who doesn't follow Jesus, I think it's super important to say, yeah, he's in this fight too. So can you share with me those kinds of stories, if you have any, about, yeah, you know what, here's where Jesus shows up every day, or one specific story where it was very obvious that he's at work?
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel this week I was talking with someone about the blessing of having faith as a lens in this work. I don't know how any of us could ever do this work without constantly leaning into and pressing into his strength, his justice, his goodness that he withholds from no one. So I've seen Christ at work, and I've walked with him for 6 years in this with survivors. And when I began to really try to figure out what God wanted with Life 107 in terms of working with survivors, I sat in a hotel room in Ohio and I just prayed, God, give us what we need to come face to face with survivors and get them what they need. And I have seen him be so faithful to do that. Soon after that, he handed to us our first survivor that we could walk in this healing process with. And over time, he's given us multiple survivors that we could do this with. Here's what I'll say about the gospel of Jesus Christ. Commercial sex and being stuck in this industry does something great within the spirit. And we can bring people physical health. We can help to heal their mind from the wounds. And only Jesus Christ can bring full, pure, perfect healing. And I have, as being executive director, I've had conversations with girls in the life, and many times, almost always, they are okay with us praying over them. So we have a prayer warrior group who really prays this out for us, and we have seen great product in that. And we have seen prayers being prayed over these ladies, and they come into some type of circumstance in their life that makes the presence of God so clear to them. This work is hard, and these ladies have been through more than we can ever imagine. And so undoing all that is impossible outside of the authority of the Holy Spirit. And so not specific story that I could share with you, but just looking back over these years and thinking prayer leads this thing forward. And I have seen those prayers that have been answered for these women, and God is faithful. He is faithful to show up to them, no matter who they are or where they are. And so doing this work alongside of him makes it worth it, and it makes it hopeful.
If somebody wants to get involved with Life 107, what do they do?
Firstly, we ask for prayer. And there are times where we are able to plug in volunteers for various events or initiatives. We are extremely particular about the ladies that we align with our survivors, because it is delicate work and we want it done well. And so one place that we have been able to use one place that we have been able to use volunteers is with our mentor program. And it's a 5-week program that trains ladies who are volunteers, who are vetted, who have proven to be in this with us for the long haul. It trains them to come alongside survivors to facilitate a restorative relationship. And then we pair these mentors with survivors based on various circumstances that they might be in. We pair these survivors with mentors from Life 107, and that is a beautiful relationship. This mentor is really along for the ride. They are there through the thick, through the thin, and they become the relationship that this survivor has often never had. We are we are particular with who we align with our survivors, and that is the program that we offer that is distinctive to Western North Carolina. So yeah, if you're interested in this work, please reach out to me, and we'll see where you best fit.
Financially, people can partner with you?
Absolutely. We function off of the obedient hearts and hands of people who want us to continue this work in Western North Carolina and abroad. We have churches that are partners, and it is a blessing every time that we receive anything. We just know that God has been pressing hearts and someone has responded. So we just ask for obedience in that.
Are there other places where you partner with other ministries to help you along the way and help these survivors along the way? Or are you, as they say, a one-stop shop?
No, absolutely. We often in the anti-trafficking community in this area, we are very proud that many of us can work together. And so we often are working with the 100 Movement to send our ladies for counseling and therapy. We partner with Legacy of Hope International. And really, it is a community where we each offer what we can. We stay in our lane and we do the best we can. And we want to make sure these women are successful in recovery. And that often takes a village. Glad we have that.
Well, I'm so glad that you've spent time with us today. Is there anything that you can think of in terms of this idea that most people don't even understand there's a problem locally? They've probably heard about trafficking in China or something like that, but they don't know locally. One of the reasons why this was so much on our heart to do. But anything that I've left out that would be important for somebody's education in this area?
People who want to learn more can definitely go to life107.org. We can also partner in many ways in the community. A lot of our trainings are catered to specific areas in the community, whether that is for schools to learn more, because I do think it's important for teachers to know what this looks like. And we've seen our training be very successful in the past in training staff at schools, also churches who were interested, and clinics. There are high rates of ladies who are approaching clinics, and often people do not know what to look for. So we can help in that way, in that area, to help people understand in the healthcare facilities what this really looks like and how you can get somebody in the right place. And so, yeah, please reach out to us if you're interested in a training, understanding more, or visit us online.
Demetria, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Doc, for allowing us to be here with you.